Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here, because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
Just gonna send it.
Fluorocarbon I will use, but I have an extremely sensitive rod.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday night. How is everybody doing this week? I am exhausted. We got ICAST done with. It is over with. Thank God. It is always so much. It's fun, but it's also like it's a drill. It's Chinese fire drill. It's what my dad used to call it, Chinese fire drill. Please, everyone in the chat, let me know how the audio is sounding right now. Is it a little too high? Is it a little too low? I want to make sure I adjust that to get that thing just right, and I'm not blowing out everybody's eardrums. Let me get that to automatic, and then we can kind of get started with the night here. Get a few more people rolling in. But yeah, just let me know down in the comment section below how my audio is before we kind of get started for tonight. Good here, Scott Roberts. Okay, cool beans. And then we got one more thing. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna adjust one more thing here. That's the problem is you really can't do much about this unless you go live. That's kind of how this whole thing works. Now, my Facebook people are saying that they can't watch on my Facebook, which is always a pain, but that's kind of how it works with StreamYard is you actually have to go in and individually fix everything. But honestly, if you want to ask questions and all that, I suggest going over to YouTube because YouTube doesn't have a problem. Facebook sometimes have problems with that. Anyway, let's just get to it tonight. So tonight's thing is really just to hang out and to talk a little bit about ICAST, and then what's kind of coming up. We are going unless you guys aren't aware, we're kind of going into a recession here. Doesn't it feel weird? Like we're not doing too good. The stock market's up and down. We've had more banks fail this year than in the 2008, 2009 banking crisis that created the biggest housing bubble in the history of the United States. So that happened this year. The stock market's really shaky. Inflation is still going through the roof. And with all that said, ICAST is doing great. Everything's becoming more blindingly expensive. And that's basically my biggest takeaway with ICAST this year was there wasn't anything that blew me away. It wasn't like LiveScope is coming to you or, the turret from Humminbird, which really was a big innovation. It's just more bedazzle, more accessories on kayaks, and just overall, everything's more expensive. Example is on all the kayaks that came out, some of them like the Titan, the one from Titan is absolutely beautiful. It's a really, really cool kayak. And I have pictures from some of the things that we're going to be talking about today as well. But yeah, what's coming out from Titan, it's a really nice kayak. It's insanely expensive. The one from the pedal drive for Old Town, the Old Town Big Water EPDL plus 32. That thing is, I think they said it's going to retail for $6,000. $6,000. Think about that, guys. $6,000 now for a kayak. And if you guys follow this show, what do you think about the controversy? Oh, don't worry, big dog. We're going to be getting into that today. We're going to be getting into that today too. I honestly, I'm a regional local show, and when that drama gets so juicy, I have to talk about it. So yeah, we're going to get to the Berkeley controversy. I just wanted to start off with kind of like my thoughts and overall view of ICAST this year. And to me, it kind of just comes down to the cost, how expensive everything has gotten. And I mean, just to kind of to show you guys here, this is the Old Town. This is the one that won Best in Show for the kayaks. What's interesting about this one, and we talked about this on the live stream on Friday when we just did kayaks from ICAST. It has a pedal drive system, like a lot of high-end bikes, where after a certain amount of pedaling, it has an electric motor and it will help assist you with pedaling. Really cool idea. But then you go look at the price tag on that bad mamma jamba. Let me pull that up here. Look at that. You're talking $6,000 for a kayak. Titan's kayak, the one that we showed off during the expo that has a place for 2 mounted graphs, that's getting expensive. Trolling motors. Minn Kota and PowerPole just displayed their 2 big dogs with Minn Kota's Quest series. That's if you are fishing from a regular bass boat with a 36-volt trolling motor, 45-inch shaft, something like that, you're getting close to $5,000 for that. So you want to go PowerPole, that's a $5,000 trolling motor. You want to go with the Minn Kota's version, that's a $5,000 trolling motor. You want a kayak that can be competitive now, you're talking about a $6,000 kayak. What was amazing to me is it just feels like there's some kind of disconnect with where normal people are nowadays and where the market is. And that to me is just very interesting. 3 or 4 years ago, before, the virus of unknown origins. I don't want to say it on YouTube and get dinged or get shut off, because that does happen to some people. It made sense for all this stuff. The market was going good. Everything was going up. And I felt like when you went to ICAST and you saw some of the stuff that was coming out, the prices seemed reasonable. They seemed fine. Now, I don't know. I don't know if I can justify it anymore. And that to me is just what's very interesting, is when you're at home and, my wife and I, we're house hunting. We're trying to buy a house because we're renting right now. We're saving money. So I have more money to invest in fishing the DMV, but also so we have more money to buy a house somewhere more centrally located for the podcast. And so we could build a legit podcast studio. That's all stuff we want to do. We can't right now. It's insane. Interest rates are insane. But you go down to ICAST and they're just living in a different world. And I think that's very interesting to me. And that's my biggest takeaway first to really start off the show, is how much of a disconnect there is in between things. And that leads into the Berkeley controversy. Everyone has kind of spoken their mind on this. If anyone doesn't know, I'm trying to get somebody on the show to actually talk specifically more about the Berkeley controversy. I think every podcaster on the planet has had somebody on. We had Scott of Nico Baits on back in December. And during that episode, it's a fantastic episode. Scott's a brilliant individual. He knows multiple languages, lived in Tokyo, worked on some of the largest dams in the world. I mean, he's a brilliant man. And he talked about how the industry is very cutthroat and how people steal stuff from themselves all the freaking time. And I think in corporate and in business, people do tend to steal and they copy. A classic example, I think, of this would be, your iPhone. The idea of a touchscreen phone, that's a Steve Jobs thing. It 100% is. And it becomes the benchmark standard, and people will copy that. You look at Z-Man, the original chatterbait, patents, all in all, whatever. They basically invented a bladed jig. And so from that, you are going to have people that will eventually copycat you. And that's why you have patents in place and things of that ilk to kind of, for a lesser degree, the patents are in place to kind of protect you. And then people will end up trying to duplicate your success. And that's business. That's business 101. And you can do things to kind of like protect yourself and all that ilk. I think the bigger issue is there are unwritten rules in every industry, whether it's, FedEx, whether it's, digital content creating like I'm doing here, baseball, strength and conditioning, bait making. There's unwritten rules. And I think the way Berkeley did things, that's what rubbed people the wrong way. It was so blatant. Everyone steals from everybody. There are Asian companies out there that steal from the Chinese bait manufacturers. Are a classic example. When they would go to ICAST and they would allegedly, try to scoop up as much information as they could to go back overseas to try to like duplicate it. Again, this is all, allegedly, that's what would happen. So this is nothing new in the industry, but when you look at what Berkeley did with some of their baits, they have a track record of it. Yeah, like Scott Power. I love this thing. Berkeley's new company motto: if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And I don't even know if it's cheating. Okay, yeah, it's cheating, but I meant like if it's more nuanced. If you are at a corporate table with all the bigwigs, it's laziness. And it's so freaking lazy that when Berkeley comes out there, they had the Schlabberknocker, they had all these different baits that would come out, and everything they did was a blatant copy. Example is, again, of the mag draft, of different baits that Mega Bass put on. It seems like they're blatantly copying these things, and this wasn't a one-time thing. You could rub that off. It seems like they're habitually doing that. Then on top of this, and this is something I think this is what some people aren't talking about. How are they winning Best in Show? How is that going on? How is it Berkeley keeps winning all these prizes for basically duplicating somebody else's work, somebody else's homework? That to me is what's so fascinating is not only allegedly Berkeley is duplicating other people's baits, copying other people's homework. They're getting awarded for it. They're getting accolades. They're getting praise from the industry. That to me is what's interesting, and I really wish people would talk about more. Is okay, yeah, they're okay. Let's say they're cheating. Then why is it they're winning Best in Show at ICAST? Why isn't ICAST doing something about this? Last year they got praise. Like, it's a habitual problem, and what you got to do is it comes from top down. It shouldn't just be like we should yell at Berkeley. The industry needs to kind of take care of itself. And I think that's what the industry's doing. The industry's also in a little bit of turmoil right now. There's a lot of companies being bought up. I think Big Bite got bought up. A couple other smaller companies got caught up, and we're going to be doing a specific show just on that as well. So don't worry about that. Don't you worry about that. It is just so interesting to me that this industry is slowly becoming monopolized by a few big brands, a few big corporations. And that to me is terrifying. The more consolidation you have into a couple monoliths, that's going to be less jobs. Okay, you're going to have less pro staff if you only have one big conglomerate. That's just, look at what happened when Whitewater, when Johnny Morris bought out Ranger Boat, Triton, and all them. He cut a lot of pro staff. What happens if you have just two bait companies? You don't think that's going to shake up the industry a little bit? Of course it is. Because the bait companies don't need the pros to sell products anymore. They really don't, not with social media. And I think that's what they're starting to learn too. That's a whole different other topic there. Do I think Berkeley needs to be like reprimanded for it? No, because what'll end up happening is they're just going to die. They're going to go away because there's other things that are going to happen. So example is, if you're Berkeley, and let's just say 2 to 3 more years in a row, you habitually steal people's work, like blatantly. Let's just say it's literally a mag draft, and they call it Mag Draft 2.0, the Berkeley edition. Let's just have fun with this. And then you have one of these Berkeley pros walk on stage and say like how this bait is like the absolute shit, and this is completely different. What'll end up happening over time is the pros are not going to want to pimp out their work because it hurts their credibility. That's the other part of this that people aren't thinking about as well. The industry will take care of itself, because if you're a big time pro, at some point you got to be looking to Berkeley, no matter how big the paycheck is, like, hey, listen, I can't rep this because it's going to look bad on me because of what you guys are doing. And soon the pros will revolt on it too. Eventually that will happen, because the paycheck, how much do you have to get paid for your dignity, for your respect, for your word in the industry? And so that stuff will take care of itself over time. And people just don't buy the product. It's a free market. And I think we got to let capitalism do its thing here, where if it's a shitty product, don't buy it, don't support them, and they'll stop that stuff. And the last thing about Berkeley, because I was talking to some friends while I was creating, and last week was insane. We had 4 live streams. I dropped 3 podcast episodes and a ton of short form content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, everywhere. But in between all this insanity, I was talking to some of my friends about, when was the last time Berkeley actually innovated? And guys, let me know in the chat down below. When was the last time Berkeley innovated? Like name the last Berkeley product. Like, holy shit. You know, when it came to like electronics and trolling, like example is, I think every company has their big one. So example is, I think Garmin, they came out with Live Scope. Holy shit. That was a moment. Humminbird came out with this thing called structure scan, or, side scan. Wow. Blew up everything. Humminbird again, or I guess it was Minn Kota Humminbird. Oh wait, I think Humminbird bought Minn Kota by that point. My timeline's a little messed up, but you'll get the point. Minn Kota says, like, what if we made this thing called the Ultrex with spot lock? Boom, home run they hit. And you have these companies that make Z-Man, the Chatterbait, boom, home run. You have these companies drop these big bombs of like innovation. And then they kind of go into stagnation for a little bit. Berkeley, I feel like, has been in that stagnation period of not innovating for a long time. And I think it's because of who's running the company, and that it's probably, they believe it's cheaper to copy people's homework and pump out new products every year than it is to try to innovate new products. Now, with that said, I had somebody in the industry tell me that the best way to actually move product is not necessarily to innovate, but it's always to have new stuff. The newest stuff you put on display will always sell well. And I think that's interesting, because if you have that kind of mindset, let's say that is true, that the newest stuff in your lineup will always be hot and will always sell better than old stuff. You're going to put new stuff out regardless if it's good or not, to an extent. Like, quality doesn't matter at that point. It's the quantity of each year you crank out something new. And I think this happens with like we see this with the iPhone, for God's sakes. How much of a difference is there between an iPhone 13 and 14? How much of a difference is there between a 14 and 15? There's not a lot, but it's the idea of it's new and we'll incrementally adjust it. Shimano is another great example of this, where, you look at the Stella line, and it's like, I think it's like a top-down approach where anything that's invented, it's put into the Stella line, and then over the years it gets trickled down. But I think the engineer said they're like 4 to 5 years ahead on what the next product's going to be. So they're 5 years down the road already, which in theory means they have a reel they could put to market now that would be 5 years ahead of everything else. But if you did that, it probably wouldn't make the best business sense. You want to drip feed the whole thing. And I don't know. To me, that doesn't seem, I get it from a business sense, but then it's like, you're not the innovator anymore at that point. And you're not Steve Jobs. And that's the things, we don't have the Steve Jobs in the fishing industry. And honestly, we lack a Steve Jobs or Elon Musk in a lot of industries nowadays. These people that are like, damn the torpedoes of incremental. I want to drop something in the market that is just going to shake things up. And I think that original iPhone will always be the classic example of, you drop that to market, it blew people out of the water. It was so ahead of its time. And we don't have those anymore. We have these safe CEO business types, middle managers that just like, let's just play it safe. Let's not innovate. Let's not push it too far. Let's get to some questions here. David, hey, Thomas. Hey, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Some other things that I really thought that I thought were cool. I thought they were a little expensive. Was like the Shimano Albion, which is their new BFS reel. BFS is here to stay. It is growing in popularity, and I think once you start seeing, I think things become popular. How am I going to word this? Things can be on the down low, and then things can get hot when they start winning and get into the limelight. The Mag Draft is a classic example. People were throwing that thing for a while, and it was popular, but it wasn't like an absolute media storm until it started to be winning tournaments and things like that. Then it becomes like that media storm. Same thing with the glide baits. It's like, it's okay. It's popular. People know about it, but then Milliken wins a big tournament with it. YouTubers make it sexy. Then it becomes a media storm. BFS to me right now is in that popular phase where once somebody wins a couple of tournaments, flipping and pitching with a BFS setup on 8-pound test, 6-pound test, that's when it becomes a media sensation. Everyone's going to throw it. And so I think we're on kind of the cutting edge with that. And you're going to see more and more people, gravitating towards that. So my suggestion is to get in on the BFS craze now, because it has its place. I think that is one of the biggest niches that we don't talk about. And I watch Japanese YouTubers over in Japan with subtitles, and I read it just like anime to watch what they do. And I'm 100% sold that BFS is the wave of the future. It's here. You need to be getting on that now. It's going to get cheaper. It's the next thing that's going to win you tons of tournaments. What it allows you to do is something that we've been needing for a long time. And it might not win every tournament, but if you're like a creek fisherman or you like to fish for smallmouth, hello, it's awesome. to be able to throw a little crankbait, not on spinning tackle, but on a bait caster is so great. To have a drag system on a bait caster is fantastic. To throw a trout magnet on 6 pound fluorocarbon and whip that thing out there, it's pretty freaking cool. And you don't always have to worry about the braid to fluorocarbon leader. So it has its place in the industry, and I think that's going to be the next thing that really catches on fire. But again, the Shimano Albion, that's a $500 reel. It's $459.99. Jesus wept, that's expensive. Holy God. But everything I really saw, so much of it just seemed over the top expensive. The other big trend I saw was live scope things. So the Switchblade was a very interesting from Yak Attack, which was their deploying system for Garmin, and I think it was Lowrance. It doesn't come with a handle, which is weird because there's an aftermarket brand out there that I saw some of the big kayakers use where it has a nice handle and you can point it and stuff. But the one I saw from Yak Attack doesn't actually have a handle. You have to kind of like twist a knob, it looks like, which it's okay. But if you're spending $250 on this thing and you don't have a handle on it, I just feel like it's like buying a truck, but there's no cup holders. It just felt weird to me, but okay. Maybe that's the next edition they'll have next year for $300. It'll be like, this one comes with a handle. Sorry, I feel like I'm shitting on the industry too much, which is kind of funny because I own a fishing show. The one thing about the Titan I really liked, and then again, the native Titan series, I'll bring that back here for you guys. The native Titan series. Okay, so it's the cheapest, relatively talking, at $3,600 for a brand new kayak, which is insane. It has a swiveling seat, which I don't know. Hobie, why the hell is this not something you did? This is a slam dunk to have a seat that can actually move like that. That should be something that's standard. And I think with the kayak industry, what's really interesting is Hobie had such a leg up on everybody, just like Z-Man did with the chatterbait, and now everybody can catch up to them. And I think they're going to really have to lean into their tournament trail more for financial reasons, because you're getting to the peak at what kayaks can do. And I seriously, what more can you do? I saw this one guy. It was for it was a Titan video, and maybe I can bring it up and I won't get dinged for it. Let me see if I can do that. But this dude had Titan. My internet's so slow. I cannot wait till I actually own a home someday with really good internet, with a legit podcast studio. We'll get there someday, guys. We'll have banging internet. ICAST. 4 days ago. Oh, here it is. All right. So let's look at the sumbitch. So this guy right here, this is the first look at the fully rigged Titan X12.5. It has a trolling motor. It's got two, I think those are Garmin's. I think those are Garmin's from this angle. We don't know yet, but that's not important for what I'm saying. It's got dual screen Garmin's. It's got pedal power if you actually want to get some exercise. If not, screw that. You got your box for your tackle. You got wheels for this thing. You got dual power poles, and you got a trolling motor in the back. Let's guess how much this. In the chat, how much do you think this thing retails for? This thing looks like a small damn boat. This thing's insanely pimped out. A trolling motor, 2 graphs, pedal power, power poles, and you're talking over $10,000 for this thing. And I know in the chat while you're typing on the keyboards, but Tom, it's cheaper than a $100,000 bass boat. Yes, but that mindset is not correct if you're into the kayak world. The mindset shouldn't be like, well, it's still cheaper. And then in 2 years, it's $13,000. You're like, well, Tom, it's still cheaper. And then in 5 years, it's $15,000. Tom, it's still cheap. It's this creep. It's a slow creep of this industry where as soon these things are going to be, I said it on so many live streams, and these words will come real. A fully rigged out tournament kayak will be close to $20,000 to $30,000 in the next 5 to 8 years. $20,000 to $30,000 for a fully pimped out kayak. That's where we're going. They're just going to become individual John boats with how much stuff is on there. I'm not saying that that's bad or not. I'm not. If that's what you're into, that's fine. But let's just with all the stuff that's happening in the bass world, the boating world, when people are saying that boating is getting too expensive, dude, if you're a kayak angler, you got to look at what's happening to your industry and be like, holy shit, where's this going? Can we put a stop to this? Can we put like some kind of cap on it? In different sports, they put caps on it when it comes to technology. And technology is not just forward facing sonar, which everyone likes to complain about. It's also having a trolling motor, a torpedo, then 2 graphs, then dual power poles. You got to put some kind of cap at some point until this is again a $30, $40, $50,000, insane value industry. And I'm not saying it's a really cool looking kayak. Hobie they all make great kayaks. To me, though, it's insane what my first kayak was that was considered top of the line compared to now. It's night and day difference. And it really does come down to like all these accessories that you can put on them now. And that's what bleeds you to death financially, when it was just like, maybe you got a torpedo back in the day, or hell, it was badass when you could get a pedal kayak. That was pretty cool. And now all of a sudden, we got Steve on. This is just the pinnacle of the sport. Doesn't have to represent the entire industry. I understand. The problem is it's just the trickle down effect. An example is the pinnacle of the sport. People will have a bass boat that is, it's just stupid. It's not a real number. Let's say $200,000. The pinnacle is $200,000 for a give me a pro off the top. Kevin Van Dam. Kevin Van Dam has a boat. Let's say it's $200,000. That trickles down to where the guy that's fishing at BFL, to be competitive, generally speaking, mind you, his boat is going to be a little bit more expensive to compete with the Kevin Van Dam, to compete at that level. And then technology and prices and the accessories come out to where, well, now to be competitive, you need a $250 boat to be at the pinnacle. Well, that trickles down and it lifts everything up a little bit higher to where, back in the day, if you had a Hobie pedal kayak and you were competing, you had a distinct advantage, but it was still financially like you could do it. And to me, that's what I think is so interesting. I have a 2015 Slayer Propel, and I just say maybe 300 of add-ons on it each year. Yeah, and I have a Ranger boat. It's a 1980. It's a 2001. Like, I can't afford a brand new thing. But again, what we're getting at here is, yeah, and I know people in the chat is like, well, I have a used thing. It's like, okay, are you fishing the Hobies? Are you fishing the Elite Kayak Circuit? Are you fishing the Bassmaster Opens? If you want to take a crack at it, that pole keeps getting pushed up with how expensive things are getting. And part of it's inflation. And part of it is, I think you need to put some kind of parameters on it. And I think a great example of this in a positive way is the Hobie OBS series. Sorry, I'm dyslexic as hell and acronyms are terrible for me. The Hobie series, where no motors, you got a pedal. That's a great equalizer. And that's something. And that's almost, to me, it's almost like with bass boats saying like it has to be a 250 or less, but it's really just going to be a 250. I think it's kind of nice because it does limit that you don't need a torpedo and you don't need a trolling motor to be competitive. It brings everybody down to a little bit more of a level playing field. And I think that's very smart. And that's something that I think more industries should do about that. But I mean, I think it's just that kayaks this year at ICAST was the most glaring, where the prices really are starting to pop more, to where I thought a Hobie PA 14 was going to be the most expensive kayak. And then something comes out and it's like, hold my beer. It's that much more expensive. And that's what you're seeing now too. And Steve, I think I was thinking 10 grand too. Yeah, about 10 grand. Like, I know, like, there's a lot of kayaks pimped out now that are over 10 grand easily. Carl Jochimson, if you look at his Instagram, he has a new kayak pimped out that has dual Helix 10s. He has Mega 360, Mega Live turret on there. And he also has a torpedo and a bunch of other stuff. Carl Eber is like 6K. Yeah, it was 6K for that. It's just, it's insane. And I get it's in all industries, but what's interesting is why more people aren't looking at cost-effective things in the industry, to me. And that is what's so fascinating, is when you go to ICAST, everyone wants to one-up each other with how much everything is expense-wise. And you very rarely see people in the industry that are like, hey, listen, we want to go in as this budget model, a mid-tier model, and we're going to brag about that. everyone wants to be the guy that has the highest price thing. And you see this with boat companies too, to the nth degree. You don't have that Ford guy, Mr. Ford saying like, this is the Model T, this is the thing for everybody. No one wants to do that anymore. Everyone wants to be like, hey, let's just try to like crank up the best price. But anyway, so on that pessimistic note, let's get to some more. Let's get to some more of the fun things. The other thing I thought was really neat was the Sims flyweight vest pack. Let me see if I can get a picture of it. I looked at that thing and I was like, that is literally going to be, I'm buying that just for me wade fishing. If you guys have not known, and this is your first time watching the show, I'm addicted to wade fishing. I absolutely love it. I live right next to a really good creek, Conococheague Creek, tons of access points. And in the summertime, that's all I like to do is just wade back and forth. I know I got a bass boat and a kayak, but damn, it's fun just after work just to do a little bit of wading. Please don't make me go back to pedal. Just got the vehicle. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying like, it's so weird. Like, do you not want trolling motors on there, Tom? No, it's not that. It's like, do I enjoy having live scope? Yeah. Like I enjoy having live scope. Do I think it's interesting when you have an organization that says like, hey, no trolling motors, everyone has to paddle? Yeah. Because that's like saying you have an organization that says no live scope. Putting those, and I think it's funny when people say like, to me, it's like, well, no one will do that. Like no one's going to put barriers like that. Guys, in 2004, like up until 2004 and earlier, the Bassmaster Classic, everyone had the same damn boat. Everyone had the same boat, and they only could carry 2 to 3 tackle boxes, and that was it. You want the most neutral playing field ever to nut up and shut up. The Bassmaster Classic used to do that. The old MLF TV show, same thing. Everyone pretty much had the same boat, same amount of electronics. That does level the playing field a little bit. And I think in the kayak world, the Hobie BOS series does it the best, where it's like, okay, we're going to level the playing field out a little bit, because it can get ridiculous to where money can buy you stuff, for better or worse. And you saw that in Little League when I was still coaching heavily and I was umpiring a lot, and you had no baseball bat regulations. And so people were making double wall composite bats with a massive trampoline effect. And these things got you 100 to 120 extra feet on a well hit ball. And you don't think like, oh, that doesn't make much of a difference. That means a 10-year-old boy that looks like he's just fought off leukemia gets into the batter's box and he yokes a ball over the fence 210 feet. And you look at him and it's like, how the hell did he do that? And you see this big orange composite bat in his hand. He's like, that's why. It's because of that bat. And those bats were, back in the day, man, they were like $500-600 for a baseball bat, and they wouldn't last the whole damn season. The metal walls in those things were so soft that they wouldn't last the whole season. You had to rotate them. And what we used to do, and side story there, is the year all that was outlawed because the home run derby was a joke, like an absolute joke. During the Little League World Series, not the Little League World Series, I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. The Little League World Series was such a joke because of how many home runs were being put out that they put the fences back. That was one of the reasons that Williamsport actually pushed the fences back, was because of the heat that was generated from those bats, how explosive they were. And then they readjusted the league with the ages, and then they put in laws for baseball bats, the BBB core laws, where the ball can't come off at a certain speed. So if the ball trampolines off the bat at a certain speed, it's illegal. But there was a time that there was nothing like that. And if you wanted your kid to be a rock star in baseball, screw weightlifting, just go buy him one of those hot bats, and he would literally be a better athlete, and he would make the all-star team. That happened in sports, and I saw that firsthand. Fishing is no different right now, where, let's be real, for better or worse, if you have enough money to throw at it, you would be better. And at some point, we do need some kind of like limiting factor to that, to where it's just your talent. At some point. Here we go. Carly Earson, photography. Let's see. Just fished the Susky on Saturday. And if I didn't have a Motor Guide XI3 on my Bonafide SSS 127, I wouldn't have fished as I did. Yeah, correct. Yeah, and again, like I said, technology is great. I'm just talking from a tournament perspective. Do you just say there's no limits then? Am I saying that I want everyone to go back to the Stone Age? Nope, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I think you should go back to the Stone Age and everyone should just paddle and like rub two sticks together for fire. I'm not. However, we're all in agreement that everything's getting more expensive, right? Like, I think chat, help me out here. We all agree that kayaks now are more expensive than they were 5 or 6 years ago. And what I'm seeing is not just a steady rise. This year in particular, going to ICAST, talking to some of the reps, it's not like this. It's doing this now. The jump in price is insane right now. And I think it's just going to be interesting in the next couple of years. What's the breaking point on that price wise? I also think this is a great time though for used. I think one business, if you want to start a business right now in the fishing industry, this is what you do: buy used kayaks and resell them. So no different than what boat manufacturers do, where you could trade in your boat for a different one. I think that market's going to get hot. I think the used market is going to become super hot right now, where you can pick up a what was the example? I was using a PA 14 because I was like an old, really good old kayak. So you can get a top of line like 2014, Hobie 14 or 12, and you're going to get it on the cheap and throw a trolling motor on that bad boy. You're good to go. I don't even know if I would buy a brand new kayak. There's one new kayak I'd probably buy. That's on my wish list if I could afford it. But those are my thoughts on that. Oh, let me show you guys this vest, because I think this vest is really, really, really dope. Yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. I'm gonna be on here just for a little bit while longer. This is more just kind of like my thoughts on ICAST, and I feel like I was trying to be too much of a Debbie Downer, which I really don't like to be a pessimist on it. I just feel like there wasn't anything that blew me away this year, innovative wise. I mean, the power pole motor was. I think power pole is really good. I really think power pole's motor. They have the best customer service in the industry. Power pole is fantastic with that. I'm having issues with my Google account right now, and dealing with Google, I would rather take a cheese grater to my forehead than try to talk to Google Help, because it's all robots. Power pole, it's a human being. Her name is probably Nancy. She'll make you some sweet tea and she'll talk you through everything. Power pole is great. They are. Dude, $5,000 for a trolling motor. I don't know. It's probably the best trolling motor in the business, but damn, that's a hell of a price tag for a trolling motor. And I know, and Minn Kota did the same thing too. I don't know, man. I mean, eventually I'm going to have to get something like that, but still. So this is it here. This is their vest. It's a backpack vest for fishing, and this is for fly fishing. But honestly, if you're a guy like me that enjoys like wading the creeks and everything, I think this is a pretty dope idea, to where you can keep the stuff right there in your person, your pliers, your baits, things like that, and you'll be able to wade the creek. And even honestly, if you're kayak fishing, you could wear this with an inflatable. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't break any laws for Northern Virginia Kayak Association or NVKBA or Hobie or things, but that'd be really cool. So you have everything right there on your person. So that was something else that I found that was like really, really, really cool. And of course Sims like waders, because that's something else I want to get, is some waders too. I need to get actually a real job probably, so I can actually afford my addiction to fishing and horses. It probably would be very helpful. There were some leader ideas that were cool. I don't, where it's like it has different tensile strengths, but I am not versed on fly fishing enough to know how that would work or how well that would work. And then I kind of wanted to finish the show off with the try to get this here. I'm trying to find what's so funny is I'm trying to find that swim bait that's creating such a stir. Now I can't find the thing, which is kind of makes sense. That's kind of how it works. Once you want to find something, you can't find it. As I scroll like a son of a bitch through here. Okay, we're going to delete that one. Where are you? Striking came out with its own. Oh, there it is. There's the thing that's causing so much of a stir in the industry. So, all right, that's some bitch right there. Yeah. Honestly, though, I mean, it looks like a really cool blueback bait. I know I would fish that thing for blueback particularly, but again, it's just, how is it that one? Why is it Berkeley always wins? It seems like every year some kind of accolade, but they don't invent. And even the striking bait, dude, that thing looks like the rock crawler. That thing really does look like the Spro rock crawler when it comes to the paint job and everything else like that. And even name, what's it called? Like the gravel tickler. Let me find that thing. It was right here. There it is. I'm sorry, not the gravel tickler. That's really gay. Sorry. The Strike King Gravel Dog is the name of it. Dude, come on. That's the rock crawler. That's what that is. In reaction to your rant, you should look into lure building and lure building supplies for Jakes. Yeah, I'll ask him about that if that's something people want. Are you asking me to build lures? Because I can't build anything. I'm trying to work better on doing skirts for my jigs and stuff. But I don't even build my skirts out. I just buy dirty jig skirts just to be able to replenish them. I like to take the finesse swim jig and I'll put a thicker skirt on it, but I can still have the light wire hook depending. But Steve, that's a really good idea. Yeah. I'll look into getting some. And what, Steve, what in particular, if Jakes could have certain lure building materials and supplies, what would you like them to carry? What would you like them to carry? Where was that other thing I saw that I thought was really, yeah, this thing right here is the gnat from Bill Lewis. This thing is allegedly supposed to be a nice little crappie killer, which I think is supposed to dive 3 feet. It's supposed to be the size of a quarter. I think something like this will 100% kill on the Shenandoah, the Upper Potomac, place like that for our smallmouth. I really think that's going to absolutely kill it. There was another bait too. I was just scrolling through here. And I thought it was absolutely going to smoke it. Oh, this one. Yeah. I should have led with this one because you guys know. So spy baits are an absolute killer. And it's not just for smallmouth in deep, clear water or on the St. Lawrence. It is really good for largemouth on certain bodies of water that rhyme with Potomac River. It's Potomac River. I've caught a lot of fish on a spy bait on the tidal Potomac River, especially when the grass isn't fully up. So early in the year, really, it kills there. But the problem is that bait wants to dive so much deeper because of how heavy it is. And the way I get around that is I will fish a braid to mono leader, and I'll make the mono leader like 20-pound test. And that'll help lift it up so I can slow roll it. This is a shallow version. So the Drurella Spin 80 shallow. And I think this thing's going to be an absolute killer, even on just like on my Hidden Gems episode on the Shenandoah River in the wintertime. You know, I caught a couple of fish on a spy bait when the jerkbait bite died. Because here's the thing. If you had a jerkbait bite and it goes away, fire a spy bait out there immediately. Spy bait usually works when this jerkbait bite dies. And so having the shallow one is about damn time somebody came up with something like that. So good stuff there. Really good stuff there. And then put that there. And then honestly, the last thing that was a big hot craze right now is creating baits that work better for live scope, which is interesting. I don't know if it works or not. I don't know if it's a gimmick, but there's a lot of companies coming out with hooks in particular that have very flat sides on them. So that way the signal can ping off of the heads a lot easier. It's been brought to my attention, and this is Tom, this makes sense, that a drop shot, the reason it's so effective for so many years on live scope is because it's so easy to see the thing. You have a leader, you have a weight, you have a hook, everything's separated. So it's this big mass that you're throwing out in front of your beam. And that's one big reason people like throwing it. It makes perfect sense. I don't know why I didn't logically it makes sense. Well, now they're creating jig heads that are specifically made for fishing live scope so it can reflect a little bit easier. Yeah, it makes sense logically. Is it worth buying? I guess it's if you have live scope. And then how much is live scope going to play like this going into years forward before the fish get, because I think the next big thing for live scope, and I said this on the channel, you're going to have live scope where you can read it easier out to 150 feet or 120, let's say 120 feet, because those fish are getting tuned into having a beam hit them in the side of the head. I really do, especially on places where they're so used to seeing that scope. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that progresses as we go on. And then coming up this week, guys, and then the other big thing that I've heard a lot was the last bait. The last bait that I think is going to be a big hot one is it's a mega bass bait. It's the Mega Bass Sleeper Crawl, because everything mega bass that comes out with that has sleeper in the name, or it's the sleeper gill or the sleeper gill, sleeper crawl, things like that, it absolutely kills it. Brew tank. What did you think of the new VMC Ned rig hook? Think it was VMC. Let me take a look see at it, bud. VMC. So the only thing with the Ned rig hook that I don't like, and this is just me with the Ned rig hook, is I don't like that mushroom style head. I feel like it gets snagged so much more than a ball head. And I just mean, or an arctic style jig head. I think the arctic style jig head or a boring old ball head jig is by far the best for throwing a Ned. Because where are you going to throw a Ned rig? It's going to be around rocky or woody areas. It's not going to be just plain sand. And I feel like this style hook, in my opinion, again, it's just my opinion, it just gets snagged up so much for when you're using it lightly, when you're using this light style line. And when you have light line and that head gets lodged into a couple of rocks, you're going to have major problems. My favorite head by far that I found, this one right here, it's the Boss Mini Ball Jig Head. I absolutely love this thing for like a power Ned. Can I speak English? Ned rig setup. This is by far my favorite one on the planet. I have not. This is one you've seen in tons of videos, hidden gems videos, everything. I'm using this head here. It's accounted for some big fish this year when I was fishing the Antietam Bass Masters. It really saved my butt a couple of times. But it's called the Boss Mini Flip Jig Head. It's literally a jig head that comes with no skirt, and you could put your Ned rig onto that thing and you can fish it on a BFS setup. Fish that bad boy on a BFS setup, 8 to 10 pound test. And what's great about it is the head will pretty much go through anything you want. And because you fish on a little bit heavier tackle, you can really pull it out of that area. So if I'm fishing, example is in the wintertime, pull that back there. So if I'm fishing in the wintertime, a lot of times when those smallmouth hit in the wintertime and they hold, it's going to feel like mush. It's going to feel like you have a leaf on the end of it. And it's actually not a leaf. It's like a 5 to 6 pound smallmouth. When I was fishing those light Ned rig heads on my light spinning rod setups, you would try to gently pull it out of a lot of those areas or try to really feel what that is. Because when I would set the hook with that light setup, you'd get it snagged. And then you would have to go blow out the area to go get your bait back or break it off. Or that head would get stuck in a little nook when you're fishing this perfect pool, and you'd have to go over there, either unjam it or you'd have to break it off. When you go to a finesse jig head style and you can throw it on 10-pound fluorocarbon, medium light, extra fast rod, all of a sudden, if you feel some mush, set the damn hook. Who cares? It's a log. You got 10-pound fluorocarbon. You got, 14-pound fluorocarbon. You can pull that whole thing with you. But what ends up happening is you're going to catch way more fish, because what you thought a lot of times in that spinning tackle was a leaf, it was a bass. And you forgot to set the hook because you're afraid you're going to break off. Because that's what I do. I got 12-pound, 14-pound, braid main, and I put it to like 10 to 8-pound fluorocarbon. And because that knot and everything, you get a little bit more sensitive. Oh, do I really want to set the hook or not? With that finesse Ned rig power setup like I have, when in doubt, just swing on them. Who cares? You have enough backbone where if you get hooked into a log, you can bring the log with you, but you're still able to present that tiny Ned rig. And that changed it up. And I outfished Jeff Green when I went out with him last winter. We were out there fishing and we only caught like 5 or 6, but we had close to like a 17, 18-pound bag of smallies on the upper Potomac. And the biggest thing is I was just setting the hook left and right. I stuck 2 trees and a stick, but I also caught 2 massive smallmouth, and they literally felt like a leaf. It was just something a little different, and you're willing to whack on them. And so that's kind of that setup there. And I feel like I went on a tangent with that brew tank. Sorry about that. Go with a jig head or ball head jig if you can get away with it. If not, the perfect Ned rig head is the cheapest one you can get, because I feel like with Ned rig heads, those mushroom heads, you're going to go through about 6,000 of them. I highly suggest going with cheaper ones. That's why with drop shot weights, generally speaking, I go with lead ones, because right now I'm not a billionaire. I'm not sponsored by anybody. And so if I lose a couple of lead catfish weights for my drop shot rig, who cares? It's cheap. And so if I fish the old school Ned rig heads on light tackle, I try to find the cheapest ones possible, not the tungsten ones, even though they are very good. I'm not saying they're not. I don't care if I lose a couple of them. Yeah, so I really hope that helps there. Steve, I would ask Jake's Bait and Tackle to support the smaller businesses like Dead Meat Custom Lure Eyes, Lure Hardware, Bills, Coatings, and Paints. Maybe even support independent lure makers. I can definitely ask him about that. Again, we're kind of 2 separate entities, 2 separate businesses that are just working together. But yeah, I can definitely ask them that. That's a great idea for them to help support the local business makers. I think there's somebody that who's it, Bent Rod? I think it's Bent Rod I saw in there. I think Bent Rod is in there, but I could be wrong about that. No, yeah, Bent Rod is in there. I did see him. Sorry. I just have like these really weird back memories in my head. Anyway, so on Wednesday, we have a really big show. I interviewed the head of the Potomac River Association. This is the guy that runs the Potomac River and really runs Chesapeake Bay. And we get into some absolutely nerdy ass stats when it comes to the striper in the Chesapeake Bay, the oysters, the aquatic vegetation, how it goes into highs and lows, the state of the largemouth bass population, the new striper regulations. We are going to get there are new striper regulations that are about to go into effect. He told them to me for the podcast. You're going to get all the new laws that are going to go in place in Chesapeake Bay on my podcast episode that drops this Wednesday. And this is the first time you're going to be able to hear about them until August. So if you actually log on to our Wednesday episode with the Potomac River Association, you will get knowledge that you won't be able to get till August. So it's a sneak peek into what's going on in Chesapeake Bay. It was a hell of a conversation. We also got into the blue cat situation, what can be done about it, and also how the bay could be dying and striped bass might just be going away. And there's a fear that actually might happen. And they say the data to prove their hypothesis. And we kind of have a healthy conversation and deliberation on that. So that one is going to be an absolute blast. I enjoyed talking to him. I love when we start talking biology and bringing up the data points. That's going to be an absolute banger of an episode. And then I have a Susquehanna River episode coming. I don't know if I'm going to launch it this Friday or next Monday. But the Susquehanna River is actually coming back onto the docket. And luckily, it sounds like I'm going to be having a Susquehanna fishing report on a monthly or every other month basis. I was going to say bi-monthly. Wouldn't bi-monthly be like twice a month? I don't know. This is my issue sometimes. But yeah, 100%. Mark Burks, Thomas, maybe Jake's could carry local custom rods. I can ask them. I do not work for Jake's. I do not own Jake's. I'm not a shareholder in Jake's, but I can pass that information along that they should carry custom rods as well. No problem there. But yeah, I'll pass all the information on to them guys as well. But again, yeah, thank you guys so much. Yeah, dude, we had a lot of people listening in just to me rant. Next week, we have a banger of an episode we got coming up. We are either going to have the boys back, which would be SB fishing, HP fishing, and so forth as they fish the James River BFL. Or what we're going to be having is we are going to have a Lake Anna live stream with the man, the myth, the legend of Lake Anna himself, breaking down Lake Anna. So I'm trying to figure out, I think I double booked again because I am putting way too much on my plate right now. So I apologize. But anyway, so we have the boys podcast or Lake Anna next week as a live stream, which will be a lot of fun. So come with your questions either about the tidal James River or about Lake Anna with Lake Anna Guide Services. So awesome stuff. Thanks, guys. Like, subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to 3,000 subscribers, which is amazing. And we're getting close to almost 500,000 views on the YouTube channel. So that's super cool stuff. Like and subscribe to the channel, guys. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.